Everyone, thanks for joining the session. Today we have the most awaited session, which is the Ask Me Anything. We have all the experts ready and we have our wonderful Gilda as well. Gilda, please feel free to unmute and share. Yep, I think Gilda is out, so we can continue. So we have this session joined by our experts. So they have worked on the Agentforce on multiple use cases and they have all the information. We hope we will be able to clarify all your questions. So we'll start with the questions that were already filled in via the submission form that we shared before. So we will start with those questions, and if we have any time remaining, we will take questions from the chat as well from the audience. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. Again, we will go with the first submission. So whenever whatever you have, please post it in the chat as right now. So today we have Mohit, Jacob, Matthew, and Mike. So you have already attended the sessions, the last 5 sessions, and then any questions that were left unanswered, we are taking these questions in this session. Without further ado, we will get started. And I would like to thank Gilda for making this possible. So, this is this has a lot of effort that was done behind the scenes. This was possible because of the Gilda and her initiative and the support. So we'll start with the questions. Jacob, Mike, and Matthew, please feel free to add your thoughts to these questions. We will start with the order as we listed here.
JB, if you don't mind, I don't know if Matt and everyone wants to. Do we want to just do a quick round of intros just in case someone hasn't, seen us in the other sessions and talk with us? Because I think we should do that first. Matt, do you want to go first since I just heard your voice somewhere in the ether?
Oh, sure. Jacob, it's nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Matt Wash. I work for Salesforce. I do primarily enablement for Data Cloud. I've been doing some Agentforce enablement within the last few months. It's been kind of reaching every corner of the planet. And so our team has been kind of helping partners, our consulting partners, understand how to make that work and find valuable use cases for their customers. So I've been with Salesforce for a couple of years. Before that, I was a practice lead in the marketing cloud space for a partner. So it's nice to meet you all here today. Jacob?
Thanks, Matt. Yep. So Jacob Hayes, I've been in the ecosystem almost 10 plus years now, migrating between all different products as Salesforce changes products. So I've dealt with the data cloud world similar to Matt since the Customer 360 audience days. I've dealt with Agentforce since it was an original inception of Copilot, which, can't say that word anymore. Just kidding. But I think overall, what we're really excited to talk about today is some of the questions that came through. And I'm excited to provide some of the experience that I'm seeing. And what we've been seeing is the maturation of the product over the last, 6 to 8 months and where it's potentially going from here. So hand it over to Mike. Mike, you want to do a quick round of intros?
Yeah, I'm Mike Cruiser. I'm one of the partners that Matthew had mentioned. Been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2013. Been chasing AI for 2.5 decades. Finally able to do it because I'm not smart enough to invent it, but I am smart enough to use it. Yeah, just trying to help provide some of what the world building is trying to bring to the table here.
Thanks, Mike. And then JB, is Mohit on the call? I did not see his face.
Yeah, I think he's not here. We'll continue with this, Jacob.
Yeah, I think that's right. So then Matt, Mike, keep me honest with the next statement. So JB, as you pull up the slides with all the different questions and pieces, I think one of the big items, at least I wanted to take away from this, is this is all a learning experience throughout the whole ecosystem. I think between Matt, Mike, and myself, and I'll obviously add color to this. There's no quote unquote expert at the moment. We're all learning, and this is a great experience for us all to talk with each other and have a little bit of a back and forth conversation. I think we don't want this to be a TED talk of what we're seeing out in the industry, but we do want to answer some questions and hopefully have good dialogue and back and forth with the overall group. Which, Matt and Mike, anything you want to add to that before we get started?
That's a great point. And the other thing I want to add is also want to give you an outlet. just in case, and it may happen that you may ask a question or ask a specific detail that we don't have an answer to on this call, and that's okay. Just make sure that I'll try to get your name and information. I'm connected to the product teams here at Salesforce, and so we can absolutely go and get answers from some of those folks based off of some of the questions we can't answer today. So happy to continue a conversation if it makes sense.
All right, JB, back to you.
Thanks, Jacob. I was multitasking something. So, thank you for all the introductions. We are very honored and fortunate to have you all on this panel. So, I'm sure there'll be so many takeaways from this session today.
So JB, do you mind bringing up that slide that had a couple of the questions that I think go line item by line item as a starting point?
Yes, I am sharing it again. Okay. So, we'll start with the first one here. Can Agentforce or Einstein AI detect and provide suggestions based on the European Accessibility Act under the regulations? If not, this should be handled by AI itself or where it should be handled.
Matt, do you want to take this first one? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a European expert.
I'm not a European expert either. Is this similar to like ADA? Is this similar to accessibility requirements for web experiences? I mean, I'm assuming that might be the case here. You're going to receive a prompt. You're going to receive a response from Agentforce, and that the web experience side of it, how that information is displayed, how it's presented, is really on the implementation and the implementer side when you're delivering this in a mobile, when you're delivering this in a web experience. It's really important for that to be delivered in an accessible way. When it comes to experiences within Salesforce CRM, so if you're going to be doing things like if you're using a service agent or if you're getting responses within the app, safe to say that those have been cleared and are, abiding by all of the accessibility requirements if it's within Salesforce's CRM boundary.
Well, thanks, Matt, for being the first one to answer it. Or Mike, you got something to add too? Perfect.
Yeah, if we go back to our first session, I think Timo outlined basically a workflow. He was using Litmus, but he was able to go out with flows and be able to grab. Basically, he's actually brought up the European Accessibility Act in that session, and he was able to bring a result in. Writing emails. In general, AI is really good at code, email structure, HTML structure and stuff like that. So we can get help from the AI, but I'm just not necessarily confident that it should be the Einstein AI that is rewriting our emails for us. To get all of the context, all of that, we had to pull in knowledge and a variety of technologies, and it might be just quicker for the team to use a bespoke tool just for email to get the results that we want, but we can certainly have the tooling flag it, like, oh, this may not comply, we may have some issues here, and then get that back into the team that's creating the email content for us. That might be one way of doing with it, instead of having the AI try to do everything, the AI escalating, to the human in the loop, and letting people kind of finish what it's trying to start.
Yeah.
So I think I'll say the easiest statement in the room, because Matt and Mike did much better than me, but this is a use case by use case question. And in response to even Matt and what we were saying in the beginning, I think this is one where we might not have the right person on the phone to answer it absolutely directly. I know there's some there's some content articles out there related to the EU Act from Salesforce itself. I think this is one where if you'd like to provide a little bit more context in the chat, if you're on the phone, if not, I'd be more than happy to discuss it with you offline, whether that's Matt, myself, or Mike. But it's a good starting question. First one was always the one that was going to be stump us, right, Matt?
And is the person that asked the question on the line? Because I mean, I would love to get a little bit of specificity here. It's certainly a broad question, and it's hard to know what specific piece or component of A huge amount of legislation is within the focus of this question here. Generally speaking, does Salesforce look at legislation before we put tools out into the world? Yes, absolutely. And so it's hard to know what specific piece they want to know precisely to, an answer or get a response for. So, yeah.
Cool.
That's great info. Thank you. And moving on to the next one, suppose an agent fails to reply some queries in event of some high value volume queries, like in case of Black Friday sale or any other. What will be the fallback model applied to this type of event? In case there is no fallback model, what should be our approach to deal with such type of runtime problems?
Another very specific question. Good question, though. Matt, do you want to take first stab or you want me to take first stab?
I could tell, did we talk a little bit about volume in any of these past sessions? And
Timo might have, yeah, Timo might have covered best practices, but I don't know if he covered volume, so it might be good for us to talk about it high level.
Not
Okay.
not volumes in specific.
Okay. So looking at our internal documentation, what I am seeing is that you can have about 350 concurrent conversations per minute. And so I believe that, based off of that's based off of our open amount of API calls that we can send out to some of these large language models. If you're going to be seeing a considerable amount of traffic beyond that, well, you as a marketer, you've got call centers. You've had issues in the past where you've had to be able to deal with those things. And so using things like being able to send out those communications at a little bit more of a trickle rather than a full-on flow in the past would have overwhelmed the call center. In the present may overwhelm an AI. And so consider that when you're starting to implement some of your solutions so that you can make sure that people are getting the type of service and assistance that they need. Beyond that, in terms of fallback scenarios, I'll have to check. I'm not sure if I have anything off the top of my head to address a fallback scenario.
I think my statement was going to be very similar, Matt, to what you were saying. Is we do have different digital channels and different mediums for different use cases. It doesn't mean that there's a one size fits all that Agentforce has to handle. In this specific example, a case of Black Friday, and everyone's inputting and trying to ask more questions to a customer, like shopping assistant on a website. Is that the best use of Agentforce? Potentially. But then to Matt's point, you have to look at the end in mind of how you're designing this agent. Is the scalability, latency, and the other concerns something that it can handle? Or do you narrow the focus of what the agent does to then pass to what Matt said, to human interventions or to another digital medium or digital channel? I think that's what you should look at when you're looking at Agentforce holistically.
That's wonderful.
I haven't seen this in production. I have seen this in sandbox. In our sandboxes of 3 orgs, we are limited to the number of LLM calls per hour to 150 per hour. And we get errors in our flows when that happens. So if we're dealing with flows, prompt builder, stuff like that, our normal flow error correction can help deal with this, address this. But yeah, I haven't dealt with it in production, but sandbox, we do have those limits.
Thanks, Mike. Moving on to the next one, can the system identify patterns of inefficiency in agents, and how does it suggest corrective measures?
Another good question.
Yeah,
this one feels like, because I kept pointing everything to Matt for the last piece, or
Yeah.
Mike, would you like to start, or would you like I'm more than happy to start at a high level. We can narrow our focus down if you're good. Yeah. I feel like testing in any capacity when we're talking about agents is a black box at the moment. What do I mean by that? I mean, just like our cognitive brains understand and look at how to reason and effectively answer a question, just like in a call center environment, like Matt is saying, I think we're all seeing different ways to test. I know for myself, I've seen at least on multiple different projects, a different method of how you're testing and how you're looking at this from a test case perspective, and how is the inefficiency of a response being, feedback mechanism of that response being channeled back into the agent for the next conversation point. Now, I'm not going to take, I would love Matt to talk more about testing center and other pieces, but I think from my world, like us all to focus when we're talking about inefficiencies and actually building out the agent. What is the specific, what we talked about in our very first session in the series? What do you want the agent to do? But what do you want them to do? And talk to them almost like a 4-year-old. Again, because I have a 4-year-old in my house, you need to be able to be very specific and less fluffy words, less in all of your instructions, and tell them what should they be doing, and more importantly, what should they not be doing. And those topics, those instructions, and the guardrails itself should help you identify or narrow down the inefficiencies that then you could use tools that Salesforce is populating back out or reviewing back out into the market to get to the next level of where did it fail or where did it actually push to a customer service representative when it should have been able to answer. That's at least my high level. Matt, Mike, any additional thoughts?
I can talk a little bit about the testing center. So I put the link in the chat for that. So certainly check out this link. I will also do a little bit of digging later to see if I can find any public-facing videos that demonstrate the testing center for folks that may not be a Salesforce consulting partner. Testing center is going to be your tool to kind of test things in bulk. So you can put in a variety of different prompts and use cases and test them in bulk, and then see what the what the outputs of those, what are the actions that are coming out of every single one, and does that is that a valid test or an invalid test based off of what your hypothesis is for every single use case. So imagine putting together a big bulk test of phrases people could be saying, and that would be uploaded in a CSV, and then it runs and tests all of those different those different prompts and utterances in bulk. And so before you launch anything, it's definitely recommended to do that type of testing in bulk and understand, all the different variations that somebody might be asking the same type of question. You want to make sure that you're getting reliable replies in most scenarios for that whatever type of use case you're building towards. Beyond that, there's feedback. There's audit trails that are included with Agentforce. And so every time a user of this particular prompt has an ability to kind of give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, this was great, this wasn't great, you can reply with emojis and be able to get all of that great feedback logged back into a data lake object in Data Cloud. And you can do reporting on that. You can start to get a sense of, well, are these and how's that customer satisfaction trending for this particular use case? That feedback is really critical to being able to monitor whether things are continuing to meet your requirements or not. And if they're not, then it's a time to reevaluate and figure out what you need to change in order to improve.
I think Matt just hit on something really critical. Sorry, Mike, for jumping in. I know you jumped off mute. I think there's a lot of questions out in the market when everyone always asks, is Data Cloud needed? I think to Matt's comment right there, you guys should be seriously looking at how do I look at implementing Data Cloud when I am looking at the Agentforce components itself, because that feedback mechanism, as well as the audit trail and logs, is a critical piece for these pieces. But I jumped in too quick. So Mike, your thoughts?
Trying to read deeper into this question, I think a lot of us are projecting, AI learning, and we think there's capabilities in some of the deployments of the tools that aren't there. So, how does it suggest corrective measures? I think we're projecting that there's auto learning, auto building. It takes that feedback, I like it, I don't like it, and actually kind of bakes that back into the process, which it doesn't do, correct?
Imagine if it did.
Yes.
And what your level of trust and what it actually puts out could be. I mean, it would mean then that anyone that did not design the system has the ability to influence feedback and change the output. And from a business perspective, that's just not tolerated.
Right.
So it goes back, Mike, I would say it goes back to the end sample size of your test cases. And as Testing Center comes live, I mean, I know there's questions that have been asked to me of like, well, how many test cases should be used within Agentforce to make sure that there is no inefficiencies? There is no right or wrong answer at the moment, everybody. There is no like, you have to use 200. You have to look at this. Again, this is why we either all consultants or working with clients. We have to look at this in the way, what do we want the agent to do? And where do we predict that there's going to be an inefficiency? And you need to look through and get your test cases to you look at all eventual possibilities. We have to look like we're Sherlock Holmes a little bit and think 4 to 5 steps ahead of what our agent could be doing. The same way that we would be talking to, I always talk about this as a newest employee to the call center or the newest employee to working with us on a day-to-day basis. We want to be able to, at the very beginning, handhold them and make sure that they know what are the processes in place, what should they be doing, what should they not be doing. Again, Jacob says the same thing again, but think about it in this way as you're looking at tech. Sometimes that throws people off a little bit, that we're starting to go a little different of how we design these technologies, especially when we're looking at inefficiencies and pieces. But Mike, you were going to say something.
Yeah. So I think the conclusion we should draw is we have to apply the corrective measures. We have to basically continuously monitor this. The first couple weeks, like very, very diligently. But then after we've had these agents deployed and they're running, we should still check in with our feedback loops and just making sure that it's not starting to drift, because the source vendors are constantly tweaking the tooling to improve results because they're trying to remove bias and stuff like that. It's not near as rapid now as it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, like wait an hour and it's going to give you a different result. It's much more stable now, but they're still drifting in the system because this isn't math. This isn't 1 + 1 always equals 2. So we need to babysit these tools over a period of time, basically for the lifetime of the tools, because they can shift responses on us subtly over time.
Hey, it's Gilda. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Gilda?
Hi. I just want to jump in and ask one question. As I hear all of you sharing, we have folks who are on here that are developers, architects, marketers, data science, and some of us are unicorns. And folks who are on there, feel free to write in what your role is. And because of Salesforce, a lot of us have been trained to think technical. Everything we do is technical. We're coding, scripting, testing. But in how you've all described it, it seems like we now have, as folks within the Salesforce ecosystem, have to also think strategically and take those soft skills, because we're telling it to do something, right? It's not necessarily on the technical side, but now I have to write exactly how I want you to behave in order to get the output that I want coming out of you. Is that correct in saying, hey, folks, we now need you to hone in on those soft skills as well?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't know if anyone else was. Yeah, I would say Matt and I would say absolutely. It's why
Mike
I
is
keep saying.
thinking.
Yeah, Mike's thinking. I don't know. That's why I keep always saying, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. Again, my opinions is like I have a 4-year-old at home who everything that I talk to her about, she asks me why. And so if you start to think of that inquisitive mindset, like these fundamental agents that you're building, what would be the why question they ask you as you're trying to get them to do different actions or answer different questions? And if you can't articulate the why back, I think you would have a gap in what you're trying to design. And so that's how I think about it. But I don't know, Mike or Matt, if you think about it a little differently. I just have way too many why questions in my house right now.
And let me just say, so I love Terminator 2. And in Terminator 2, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the robot. And there are times where Leonardo DiCaprio, I think is getting upset with him because he's not behaving in a certain way. And he's like, you didn't program me to behave in that certain way. So that's where I'm referencing. It's kind of like that, where for a lot of us, I'm just saying that we have to also pull in those soft skills, and it's not always technical, but we have to be strategic in how we write these agents to behave in that certain way. Mike has this, like, I'm thinking, I don't know how I want to respond to Gilda. Based on.
Yeah, conversation I had with some of the team my team here last week was, Agentforce allows non-technical people to build things just by describing what we want, which is amazing, right? And because of that, we're going to see people who are non-programmers solve problems. Awesome, amazing. This is exactly what we want. But by using Agentforce to solve problems in an inefficient way, because Agentforce LLMs are inherently inefficient when we're dealing with the actual raw computations and the amount of power that they need to do, because you can ask an LLM, what does 1 + 1 equal? It has memorized the answer is 2. It can't calculate the answer is 2. So there's some inherent inefficiencies with LLMs, but we're going to see patterns where people have used Agentforce to solve problems that could have been used with Flow or Apex. And some of this corrective measure could be, once we've solved the problem, we figured it out, and then we have somebody on staff that can take that agent and to use a technical term, refactor it from an agent into a Flow or into Apex, so we can gain those efficiencies. So instead of 350 simultaneous answers at the same time, we can kick this out into a batchable Apex. There's a lot of technical here. Not everybody's technical. Not everybody can write that stuff. So solve the problem in the way we can solve it, and we will figure it out, better ways as we start getting the bill for it. Maybe one of the ways that we are enticed to find more efficient ways. The system isn't itself going to find smarter ways with what we have today. We can see in the community with some of the really cool marketing co-pilots where it can write flows for us and stuff like that. It looks like it's coming. I'm not in Salesforce. I can't speak to the roadmap, but I see some really exciting promise that we may see in years with some of the directions that we're seeing in some of the product. But today, yeah, this is a manual problem.
Well, and the other thing is that this is a moving target, as everything is. And so best practices, we certainly have a point of view on how instructions should be written today, how descriptions should be written, the type of natural language that we would use to build an action. And in all of these cases, brevity is the soul of wit. If you overload something with too much language and overload a particular instruction with too many conditions, it may start to trip up. And so I think through, as we start to get through more cycles of this, those best practices will continue to refine, just as they do for all things. And so the importance here is we've got new skill sets that we're developing as technologists, where we have to be able to fall back on some of our communication skills to be able to achieve our goals.
Yeah, I'm also looking in the chat, and Matt, I would echo your statement 1,000%. I think there also is a demystification we have to start doing about this technology. I mean, personally for myself, in the last 6 months, how many of you have started to look at agentic architecture, and then it moved from agentic architecture to agentic mesh to now agentic orchestration agents that are then being like passports to talk to another agent? This is moving a mile a minute. And for us to wade through the product marketing speak, if we look at this just neutral for a second, the reason why we always go back to what Gilda was talking about is the end state. What are we looking to do? We're looking to solve an efficiency gain, a productivity gain, something that can be measured. And whether that can be done with Agentforce, whether that be done to Mike's point, Apex, Flow, invocable actions, pieces that we've done for years, that's to be determined by you and your use case. So I think that's one of the big areas that I continue to see, like inefficiencies in product. Yeah, but I have yet to see a product that's perfect in SaaS or in anywhere. So I think we all need to put that one aside and say, does it actually solve what we're looking to do for our customer or for our client? And does it build a better mousetrap for us? And if the answer is no to both those questions, then I think you have your answer of if you start with Agentforce or not. But I know we're going down way different rabbit holes here. And that was Jacob pulling a soapbox out. So I'll throw that back for a second. But with Matt. Yeah.
One last thing is that I don't want people to forget that human beings are fantastic at solving complex problems. And so, you know, we've built Agentforce to handle a huge amount, to deflect cases, to be able to assist people's problems very quickly when they cannot reach a human. But the human beings are not being replaced at all. They can, as you're starting to build these things out, if you're starting to say, well, gosh, I need 38 different types of instructions, they all need to be, here's this policy and that policy, and you need to check all these things, and you start to get overwhelmed by the complexity of this particular use case. Look back and say, is the complexity of this use case right for Agentforce, or should we keep a human in the loop on this one? And so just keep that in mind as you're starting to build these out.
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
That's right.
I don't know why I got to use my consultant speak, and I'm sorry for everybody, but like that comes down to that statement. And so Guild has always asked us, we're going to be blunt, honest, and open in these conversations. This is like a mini roundtable. So I don't know. That's just our opinions. Matt, I 100% agree with your side.
Yeah, that's a great conversation, really great insights. And I believe it's a continuous learning and a continuous evolution. So there's a lot to know. I believe there's a lot coming along the way as well for us to keep up to date. So we'll move on to the next question. This is about the pricing and the consumption model. I know we are all having the same confusion about how the pricing works. It's like per conversation, it is $2 or $2.50. What does it mean by a conversation? And Matt, if you have any internal insights, if you want to throw more light on the consumption, how it works, please add your insights on this. And Jacob and Mike, you also feel free to add your thoughts.
Another great question for the panel, and a loaded one. So, Matt, you said you want to go first? I'm more than happy.
Well, what is a conversation? So a conversation is essentially a session. And so when I reach out to an agent and I begin a conversation with that particular agent, and I would say we might get into technical particulars in terms of when that conversation begins and ends, in terms of when that session begins and ends. But essentially, you can have a very long conversation with that particular agent, and you will still be charged $2 for that conversation. When that session closes and a new session begins is when you would probably incur another $2 charge. And this is list price. You know, I would say when it comes to conversation rates, always talk to an account executive and make sure that you are getting the best deal possible based off of your volume. And so when we do often very much talk in list prices, and the other thing is that that $2 per conversation, that is for the agentic piece. There's going to be other pieces in this equation that you're going to need to look at if you need to be able to do something like, for example, pull in knowledge, if you need to be able to access unstructured data in order to be able to answer a question, because that can include row reads now for things like Data Cloud. So if you need to say, hey, is my product still covered under warranty? Well, then, you know, if that agent needs to then understand what the product warranty for that particular product is, and it's going to search through, you know, not just a document, but remember in Data Cloud, when we create unstructured data, we're going to chunk it, and we could take that one document and chunk it into many, many different rows. And so it's really a bit of a math exercise to try to figure out, well, how many rows are going to be read on average if I'm going to be in this particular use case. But those row reads are all kind of charged Data Cloud credits at various rates. Queries are fairly cheap. They're 2 cents, 2 pennies list rate for every million rows that are read. That's fairly cheap. And so I would say, but make sure that you are loading in with intention the amount of knowledge that you want your agents to have access to. Because if you just load the entire known universe of data and knowledge into your unstructured database, you could be incurring a lot of row reads for data that may not be always accessed. And so since we can't really index based off of, the particular use cases just yet. It's going to be row reads across the entire unstructured data model object. And so just keep those things in mind, that it's a yes, the $2 per conversation, that's probably the bulk of it, but there's going to be some other pieces that get tacked on as well, especially if you're using Data Cloud.
So if Matt and team are okay with it, I want to double click into a couple areas that at least I typically talk about here. And this is a touchy subject, so these are Jacob's opinions. And then we can obviously have a high level conversation. When I look at pricing, I look at it in kind of three main buckets. And Matt, obviously, feel free to keep me honest here. It's what I look at it is, what is the credit pool that you have? And remember, credit pool in our conversation piece here, can't use conversation because we're going to talk about conversation in a second, is the number of Einstein credits. And I'm looking at, maybe let's just go with an example of a Service Cloud agent at the moment. And those credit pools come from a conversation pool. It also comes from the AI request pool. And so there's two different pools to pull information from. And what do I mean by pools? Typically what we've seen is, to Matt's point about an interaction or a conversation, it takes about 24 hours, or maybe let's say this in a really distinct way. When that conversation first starts with Agentforce and that first response back, you typically have this end in three ways. So how long does the conversation hold? Typically it's about 24 hours, unless the conversation is immediately killed by an individual working through that channel, or they're transferred away to a human. So if you look at that, just iterance of where the agent is actually working with the end state customer, we typically see an interaction or a number of pools of credits being about 10 requests on an average rate being pulled into the LLM. So if you look at the credit pools we talked about, which I really wish I had a diagram here, and I can't show you mine, is from those request pools, we're either saying the supplemental requests are being pulled from the Einstein AI request pool, or the number of users by license seat per AI requests are being pulled in, or it's that conversation piece, which is one conversation is typically about 200 AI requests at a very high level, but don't hold me to my math, my back of the napkin math. So that's typically, if you're following Jacob's brain at the moment, I feel like I'm from Always Sunny doing my little arrows. But if you look at that, then to Matt's point, we're looking at potentially word counts by AI credits of what the actual response is coming back and working with the end state customer via the agent. And that could be, if it's less than 1,500 words, it could be roughly around 10 AI credits, up to, if it's over than 3,000 words, we're seeing potentially about 30 AI credits, and then don't hold me to the math itself. But you can see, why is Jacob inundating you with lots of different pieces and napkin math? To Matt's point, you have to be very strategic of what you're looking at here and understand the license structure for your specific org and for your specific customer, or if you're working client side, what's available to you. And that does differ, like Matt said, on a customer by customer basis. So as you look through what we were talking about before of how to handle or work with a use case in Agentforce, the back of your mind should always be, what is this going to cost me? And is my costs going to exceed my revenue? Sorry for really bad math there at the moment. But if you can't answer that statement, go back to the drawing board and rewrite your ideas. But that's at least how I view it. I don't know if I made any terrible statements, but I'm sure this is recorded, so someone will be like, Jacob, that was wrong. It was 9,920 credits that could be used or something like that. But anyways, anything that I missed there, Matt, Mike, that you wanted to dive a little deeper?
I think a clarification we should have is where a conversation is. Matthew, you kind of touched on this, but I think it should be hyper clear for us using the tool when we take that chat agent and we add it to our website. That chat interface that the customer is seeing, I think that is the part that incurs those conversations, right? I don't know that was super clear that that's what it is. When we add that chat widget to our website, that's where the conversations start happening.
That's just one, Mike, to your point, that's just one particular chat, but yes, 100%.
Yeah, right. But I mean, what other conversations do we have that we can do today?
Yeah, so I mean, just if it's not an external facing use case, there's plenty of use cases that are going to call in an agent and either work in what we refer to as the co-pilot use cases back in the day, or the assistant within CRM. That's where, if we look at that service agent component, There's different buckets of Einstein credits that we need to look at. So it's very important, and I think, Mike, appreciate you bringing it up. Depending on where the agent is working, by channel, by internal or external, you're going to get a little different of a structure of what pricing is going to be used. And it might not be as clear when you first initially go down it. But Mike, continue.
All right. So what I just heard is when we're looking at our CRM and we got the Einstein Agentforce logo on the top right, and we're trying to have that conversation around a particular case record. That is not a conversation. That is just a credit consumption, correct?
So yes and no. So I'll be the really good consultant on the phone. So yes, if it's going to be an internal use case, it's going to pull from your Einstein request pool. Now, if you're going to then pull from any external LLM, this is where this could be a mixture of both. This is why I said yes or no. Now, hopefully no one's like shaking their head at Jacob at the moment. I think it's a little difficult when we just try to look at conversation $2 is what we're trying to do here, because there are different levels of where the information is pulling from. So I don't think I can be as clear as possible, which I'm sure someone's like, Jacob, go that next level, just say it. It depends at the moment. But Mike, does that make sense a little bit further as we get granular into those two examples?
Yeah. I know as a customer, we want predictable billing, right? I want to know that at the end of the month, I'm likely going to owe Salesforce X. The $2 conversations helps with that because we're not scaling up and down wildly depending on how chatty an individual is. So I mean, I do appreciate the fixed costs on something that we should be able to have a reasonable idea to predict, you know, what our chat conversation likely is going to be over the course of the month. So we have some predictable billing. Because I know one of the frustrations I hear a lot is it's really confusing to know what our bill is going to be at the end of the month, because this is very difficult to run the math with all the multipliers and all the credit consumptions and all that. So $2 does seem expensive, but when we stop and think about how much time it's saving our humans, and the fact that these conversations are running on $250,000 computers that we don't have to buy, we basically are renting them 90 seconds at a time for $2. It actually is fairly cheap, as long as we have meaningful conversations coming out of these chat agents. And yeah.
Yes, sir. So Matt, do you mind rounding us out on this question before we spend another hour talking about pricing?
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that we just finished our fiscal year and nothing is ever set in stone. I don't know if anybody saw the news that came out. About DeepMind that kind of sent shockwaves. Do I have that right? It's DeepMind, right?
DeepSeek. It was DeepSeek. But yeah.
Okay. So DeepSeek kind of did send a lot of shockwaves out through this, the financial world and technical world. And really what it meant was for a lot of people that being able to use an LLM just got a whole lot cheaper. And so while that may not be great news for folks like NVIDIA and AMD out there, boy, is it really great for folks that use AI like Salesforce. It means that all of a sudden there are new tools out there that are going to be more competitive, that Salesforce can use, that are going to help bring costs down. And so we do start to see the benefits of competition in the market, where we may start to see some impact on pricing as far as that goes. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what future pricing is going to be for Salesforce, but I can say that as these things tend to get more efficient over time, we may start to be able to make either better use, or the costs per use may start to come down on some of these things.
Yep. All right, thanks, Matt. Next question before we go any further.
Thank you. This is much needed conversation. Really great information on this one. So the next one, this is for somebody who wants to learn Agentforce and are getting started with the SDO or any other org that is provided. So when we want to create an agent from scratch, I know when we are setting up, we need to activate the Einstein and then do some settings configuration. And after that, what is the next step that needs to be done? Is it creating a library, or it's more about the process that needs to be followed before creating an agent?
Mike, do you want to start here?
I like that crawl, walk, run approach. So don't start with an agent. Like there's so many moving pieces with an agent. Start something smaller, simpler, that we can provide value to the team. I love starting with co-pilots. As a, using the prompt builder, field generation prompt builder, to populate a field that we can use, because we have to start working with our prompt writing skills. We have to start writing with being able to grab the context that we need, and being able to pull that in. So I just start with a field generation prompt in that Copilot type pattern. It's one we're building. We're not using a turnkey Copilot. We're building one ourselves, and get that going, get that working, get that available to the team to say, yeah, this is giving me good results. This is not giving me good results. That field generation doesn't have that native, I like it, don't like it capability that the proper agents have. So we could build that as well as a custom object with the screen flow to manage that. That's a great place to start, because you're not trying to solve all the things. You're solving one particular problem. You can tune your prompting on that particular field generation, because you likely need that for your agent anyhow, that field generation for the larger problem you're trying to solve. So now you can start building the agent and stuff like that. And then you can grab that same prompt and you can pull that prompt that's generating that field, and you pull that into the agent at that point, and you've already got a tuned field generation on that. And if you grab 2 or 3 field generations to build out that overall prompt, that's where I like starting, because it's scary. It's scary starting on something that 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 in production. Yeah. Jacob,
Yeah.
Matthew.
Matt, do you want to go? Because mine's going to be
sure.
very simple. Yeah.
Okay, probably mine is too. Start with the business objectives you're looking to solve.
Yeah.
Really kind of look at what are the questions that are coming to our mind where Agentforce is starting to come up as a potential solution. And when it comes to the technical pieces, how do we start to execute on that? I mean, I would say do your research. Absolutely do your research. I would get this all the time with Data Cloud. People would come to me and they would ask about what are the use cases for Data Cloud? And I so badly want to respond, well, study the platform and then you'll know the use cases. And so, however, because we have use cases. If you go look at our product literature, there's going to be tons of different use cases for Agentforce. Just as we've had tons of different use cases for Data Cloud. But those aren't your specific use cases. They're not personal to your business. Sure, they'll give you a sense of some general things, but you'll have your own aha moments the more that you start to kind of understand how these different components work. And sometimes in these cases, rolling up your sleeves and getting into the tool, you'll start to generate your own aha moments. And so getting hands-on is great. I would say start I mean, the question here, create a data library, sure. Get a sense of what some of your tools are available to you before you start to figure out, what you want it to do.
I think I only add one more piece to it. The specific question is like, how do I would get started, to Matt's point about what do I do first in the platform? I think that's well documented out between documentation and drills. If you want to start with X in mind, to Matt's point, these are the button clicks that you do in setup. And then everything Matt just said about how to look at an actual use case and what we've talked about before. almost that chicken or egg moment. I think you don't start with feature. For me, I start with a whiteboard and I write down our problem statement and I write down what a customer is potentially do if it's external facing and where do I want to have that touch point. That's how I look at starting. And shocking, I'm going to have a session this week of how to look at starting with Agentforce. So there's those pieces. And then to Matt's point, or even my point, watch the videos. Salesforce is doing a really good job on Agentforce Decoded right now to show what's the potential possibility behind the scenes. And then you have to get in, you got to get your, hands the keys dirty. You start clicking some buttons around in those STO orgs before they expire and play around with what you can do. There's a lot of cool stuff, but there is no set defined method. JB, back to you.
That's great. Yeah, I love the Agentforce decoded sessions that are coming in. A lot of great information in there. And the next question, how does the toxicity scoring works in the Agentforce?
Matt,
You
do
wanna
you
take it?
have a little details on the trust layer and toxicity within trust layer that we could discuss at a very high level or point to for someone to review it?
I'd have to dig. I don't have slides pulled up, but I can certainly look for
Yeah.
them. Essentially, it is part of that trust layer where, before we and after we take steps to make sure that your prompts are being properly protected and your information as in your organization staying secure. Toxicity is something that's coming back from an LLM, and so it do we take immediate action on things that are inherently toxic as a prompt going in? Not necessarily. We measure it. There are going to be angry customers sometimes that are going to be saying generally angry things. And so, if you call your agent a jerk, it's going to come back as a mildly toxic response. And so, the way it works is, it is there as a statistic to give you something to report against, to figure out what are those utterances that are being sent and how are those being used within the system.
And one of the key things is if toxicity is detected, there's another reason why you need Data Cloud in your kind of technology stack solution set, because once that toxicity flag is true, we're going to see your rating scores and the feedback within Data Cloud as well. So if you want to have a cyclic or a movement of understanding what is the toxicity, to Matt's point, if you want to action off of something because of it, or look at it and go, nope, but thanks for letting me know that there's a toxicity rating, but it's not something I'm going to action off of, you're going to need to understand the feedback mechanisms and loop. But there is a lot of documentation on this one, and it's a pretty broad question. So we'd say if there's any specific details, feel free to add them in the chat. But I'm looking at time, JB. So next question.
Thanks, Jacob. So the next question, so this is when we are using Data Cloud and we are using it activate the segments in the Marketing Cloud. So any particular use case that you can highlight when the Agentforce can be used?
Well, I mean, you can certainly use Agentforce right now to spot check. And so there are agent actions out there to be able to talk to an agent and say, is Matthew Walsh in this particular segment? The agent is instructed to kind of go through that segment, identify the individuals that would be in that segment, look up the and verify if that particular individual is in that segment. So yeah, you can absolutely create segments to assist with spot checks. I believe there's also the capability for agents to be able to do some validation, error checking with some of those segments. Beyond that, I think, there's also the ability to do custom actions and flows. And so, if what you want to do is something, build your own use case, and you want to empower an agent to be able to launch a flow that, activates a segment, give it a shot. I haven't done it personally, but, I'm just sort of putting the Legos together in my head. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that you could do with creating custom flow actions for agents. But these would all be internal tools. I would never give an external client the ability. So I think the thing that we need to put over top of all of this is you as implementers, we give you the tools to be able to do a lot within Agentforce. How you implement in a trusted and secure way is as much as up to us in terms of what we build as far as the system goes, but also up to you in terms of what you expose and choose to expose to your employees and to your customers. And so there are certain guardrails that we allow, but we also give you the ability to, I mean, to share stuff. And so I would say don't expect that Salesforce is going to make every secure decision for you, just as if you were building a website, it's up to you in terms of your implementation to keep things trusted and secure.
Yep. I think the one other piece to add here is, and I know JB, we're running out of time. So I think the one last item to add is you can do Apex and evocable calls that can be HTTP callouts to different systems, or you can leverage, in my world, I leverage lots of different processes that are occurring via other AI tools out in the market. Think about how of the overarching process flows, and not from a tech perspective, just the overall process and how many steps. When do I need to call in to, SMC or marketing cloud engagement to trigger an action, update a record, update a data extension, or even add a record to a data extension? All of those are possible. And hint, hint, in the next, I think, phase 2 or phase 3 of these series that JV is running, some people are going to show you some things that they're doing out in the market. And it's not an official use case, but you can see how the people are thinking through, how do my technology stack work together? And how can I leverage what's being done either via Agentforce or other tools to make sure that marketing cloud engagement is informed at a moment in time?
Thanks, Jacob. We'll take 3 more questions. If we can move on to the next one. Mike, I would like to let you go first with this one. So this is about the knowledge articles database. The articles are stored in various languages. My preferred communication language with Agentforce is English or German. So this is a loaded question here with multiple use cases, scenarios. If I interact in German, will only German articles be proposed? Or if I interact in English, will only English articles be proposed? And if the only relevant article is in another language, such as Finnish, will it be automatically translated? Or will I receive the article in Finnish as is?
This is going to be one of those nuanced questions. The basic answer is yes. The agent is going to try to respond back in the language that it was conversed in. There are settings in our prompts and stuff like that that allow particular languages and allow language mapping. So the LLM, the prompts are able to get English source documents and then translate that into Finnish, if Finnish is one of the languages supported by the vendor that we've picked in our prompting for the prompt builder, right? Not all languages are supported by all tools. Our top 25 languages are going to be well supported. If you're trying to find some island dialect, it may not be supported, and we may not be able to get this translation for us. But yeah, the agent's gonna mirror the language spoken, converse with towards the language. Did I get that right, Jacob?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I always go back to original, why are you asking the question? If the question is because my end state customer is going to converse with me in different languages, Mike crushed it. If you need to have that language actually sourced in a knowledge article in the exact dialect, well, then I think you should probably have it in the system in that exact dialect to just make sure that there's no potential translation issues. That'd be my only add there, Mike.
Thank you. So we'll take 2 more questions if it is okay with you. Matt, I think this you will be able to add more information on this one. What is the best practice for structuring licenses and permissions to prepare for Agentforce? We are currently consolidating and restructuring our org and want to follow the best path to achieve this for our future state.
Best practice for structuring. Now, when we say licenses, are we talking about like software licenses? I assume here.
I think,
Or
yeah.
are we talking about, and we talk about permissions? This is a big question. In terms of permissions and preparing for Agentforce, remember that an agent is taking action on behalf of the person that has access to it. And so therefore, you provide a user that has access to, that is defining this particular agent. And so the data that's available to that particular user in terms of permission sets is going to be available to that agent. And so if there are use cases where you have an agent that you want to restrict those permissions, restrict access to that data, make sure you're creating a permission set that restricts it. Otherwise, you run the risk of unintentionally exposing data to folks that would not have access to it. And so, yeah, I would say from a permission set, absolutely, you want to make sure that you've got the right, row level access to the data that's useful, and then take the approach of the least amount of permissions necessary in order to achieve a particular task. That's especially true of agents. You don't want to be giving agents more agency than they should for particular, for your use case. For structuring licenses, I'm not sure if I really understand the question. I mean, yeah, Mike looks like he's ready to answer this one.
Yeah, we're getting some challenges with licensing, where we'll buy a Agentforce package, and we're getting a single Agentforce builder license. Well, that means one admin can build the tool, can build Agentforce tooling. We can buy more. We have to work with the AEs to buy more. They are a non-trivial cost to buy these Agentforce builder licenses. So we don't want to give, licensing. We probably don't want to give licensing to absolutely all of everybody. But we'll probably find that certain individuals have a talent for building agents, and we want to make sure that those individuals get the licensing to build agents for us. We may have a primary person that does a lot of it, and we may have a couple, 2 or 3 additional people that we're trying to train, we're trying to upskill, or have some other nuance in their capability that make them good at this type of work. And we want to try to get those individuals licenses as well, but we probably don't need Agentforce builder licenses for all of our Salesforce admins when we have dozens of admins. We probably don't have that many admins actually wrenching on agents at any point in time, because the focus of the discipline to build these and build these well takes a talent to do well, and not everybody's going to have that talent. But on the other side of that, when we don't have admins and stuff like that, and we need to solve problems, we may be wanting to give some of these Agentforce licenses to even just power users to build, because they have the skill set. They might not be certified admins, but they can solve problems with agents without needing to be an admin using these new tools. So there's some balance for what we want for these paid for licenses for builder. And then what Matthew was saying for the consumption is we also have to consider.
And I think at the end of the day, the last point here, not to belittle it, is you have to understand your org structure licenses. If we're just narrowing down that sentence there of license structure. So do you have an EE org? Do you have an unlimited org? Do you have an UE plus org? And then from there, what do you have? Do you have Einstein for Service? Do you have a Salesforce Foundations org? Like, these are the type of questions, which is why we're looking at this person and going, you're going to have to talk to your account executive and work through the specific structure of your customer's org or your specific org if you're a product owner for it. And best path, it depends. So there's a lot of conversations that need to happen behind the scenes, but can't really answer this one fully directly. But feel free to reach out to us externally if that's what you need help with.
Yeah, thank you for adding the information on the customer side of the things. I think we'll take One last question. This is about the audit log for the change log for the Agentforce. If we are doing any changes to the agents, is there any place that those changes are all logged?
Mike, do you want to go first here? This feels very technical in nature. I want to give you the floor.
Yeah, this can be a challenging question. We can do prompt version pinning. So in our agents, we can say, I want to use this prompt at version 3, even though we've iterated that to version 4, version 5. And so we need to pay attention to, when we're updating our prompts, what those time frames are looking at. And just like in flows, we can see that prompt edit history when we've upgraded the prompts. Some of our generation can be pinned to a specific version, which is powerful when we want to be able to iterate our prompts, but we still want a consistent known response, facing the client. And then when we finish testing, then we can upgrade to a specific version. Or if we don't make those adjustments, the prompting will automatically use the most recent version, just like with flows, where it wants to use the most recent activated version. So there's some nuance there. We have the built-in feedback tooling that we have to turn on in our Einstein, I forget the screen, but there's a toggle that we can turn on to get a lot of this feedback. For a lot of the stuff where I said start with a copilot, start with a field generation prompt template, we don't get the automatic feedback tools. So we can build that. So we can build a custom object that we have the prompt generation screen flow with the prompt generation. We can say I like it, I don't like it, let's regenerate. And then when we interact with the like it, don't like it, we can grab the response that was generated. We can grab the object record ID that we're generating, so we can go back and see kind of that context, and we can see what those results are. At the moment, I haven't figured out how to grab the prompt version to stamp on it, so I have to watch the dates, the date time when we're stamping this, and then knowing which version of the prompt that we're using. So that's kind of that manual way of just solve problems, build it. But an interesting thing about doing that is then we can actually have that prompt, that screen flow twice on the screen. Once is the top is the known good one, and then we can actually have a second testing one that's that latest version that we're chasing to see what the differences are, so we can try to get that improvement of process. We actually do that right on our page layouts if we so chose. We only do that to certain power users to give them both versions. But yeah, there's some automatic tooling that works, but when that's just not available, we can build our own feedback collection tool.
If you're a partner, there's a solution kit that was just released by Salesforce Services about how to do deployment with CLI. So depending on who asked that question, there might be some documentation that we could share as well. All right, JB.
Thank you.
I think we're
Yes.
right at time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing all the information. This means a lot. Mike, Matthew, and Jacob.
Oh, wait, before we
Thank you very
close,
much.
3 of you experts in this field, you shared for the past hour really great knowledge. Any final thoughts for all the folks that are on the line as they start trying to figure out this Agentforce data cloud landscape? Like, what would you say, hey guys, you're learning this, here's my final thoughts, so that in the next 3 months, you're not feeling aggravated or frustrated that you're still not getting it or you're able to figure it out?
It's a good question, Gilda. So who wants to go first? I'm more than happy to, Mike or Matt, unless you have an affinity to wanting to go first.
I got to realize I'm a marketer at heart, right? And test all the things. And you can see that in a lot of my responses. They're like, just build testing, try things, start small, and build something. I think it was Matthew gave some really good business-based like prioritization. But sometimes when we're learning, we don't have to follow the business goals. We just need to find something easy, test, try. do it in a way that it's okay to fail, right? So make sure that it's not, glaring failures in front of customers, but within certain staff that are going to be tolerant of a failure. Test there, try it, iterate, go fast, figure things out, because this is hard. This is exciting, fun new times. But yeah, we have to do something. Perfection can get out in the way of progress. So test all the things.
Good one, Mike. Matt, I'll let you end. Unless you want to
Oh,
go first. All right, sorry.
no, I don't need to end.
Okay.
You've been such a great partner today, Jacob. I'll let you wrap things up. I'll just talk about the partner space. So if you're a Salesforce partner, there's a huge amount of resources that are available to you. Please use those resources. We have, if as a Salesforce partner, you should be able to access the partner community. In there are all sorts of guides to kind of get you started and lots of internal partner facing resources to get you both a free demo org where you can start to build out and test out use cases for free, as well as access all the different types of knowledge. There's huge repositories of Q&A out there. Thousands and thousands of questions we've answered in this last year related to things like Agentforce and Data Cloud. And so it's a huge internal wealth of knowledge available to partners. So please use your partner resources appropriately to be able to get and also interface us. What we are, as I say, that we're often product advocates. And so if you have questions about product, you can absolutely reach out to me or other folks on my team, and we can reach out to the product team, send that feedback. And similarly, we want to make sure that the information about updated products is getting well translated out in the partner space. So yeah, I would say if you're a partner, as I saw Mike put that in the chat, lean on that. Absolutely lean on the resources that are available to partners. Jacob?
And I love the Slack channel, Matt. I'm sorry.
As a Slack channel?
Slack channel, which is very insightful and responsive as well. So whenever a question, somebody has a question, we get the information right away. Thank you for staying up to date on that.
Yeah, let me do this. I'll also put in links to, I think these are public resources. So if you ever hit a partner login wall and you're not a partner, well, you found a true boundary. Everything else, I'm going to share a couple quick documents to get you access to our Data Cloud Pocket Guide and then our AI Pocket Guide as well.
Thank you. And sorry to interrupt, Jacob. Please go ahead.
No, I think it's fine. So Gilda, great question. I'll end it with this. There's a couple of mantras that I talk about whenever I'm doing workshops or talking with customers. And it's first things first. There's the mantra out in consulting where it's we don't want to boil the ocean. But I think my favorite statement instead to say is let's at least chart the ocean. And what do I mean? So when we're starting to focus our attention into Agentforce and these tools, and there's lots of different feature functionality sets, you need to be able to understand what is the bare bones understanding of the tool. This series sessions are a great first step into understanding that. We've already hit on many times when we talk about charting the ocean. What is the end state that you want to accomplish? And what does that end state look like? Is it internal facing? Is it external facing? And can I measure it? Because if you can't measure it, it's a use case that you should not be attempting, regardless of the tool set within the Salesforce ecosystem. And then the other piece you've heard me, and I think this whole panel talk about, is an inquisitive mindset. Open up your mindset into what is Agentforce and what is AI in the industry working on. I think for myself, how I look at that is I am not a master or subject matter expert because this tool is changing, where the industry is changing sometimes monthly, if not quicker. We all got that wrench thrown in, to Matt's point, for DeepSeek. That could happen tomorrow with a net new thing out in the market. So understand that you're never going to be the master of all understanding in this, but try to get to the baseline understanding or foundations understanding of what the tool can provide you. And then, just like all good consultants, customers, or if you're working as an admin, work through a problem set one bite-sized chunk at a time. And that's enough consultant isms for you all. I appreciate your time. JB, back to you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And I don't think we have any other questions. And thanks for answering the questions as well in the chat. And thanks everyone who have been sharing the information in the chat, your learnings as well. I think we can call it a wrap. Thank you everyone once again, and thanks Matthew, Jacob, and Mike for being here and sharing all your insights. And next session is about executing Agentforce projects. We have Jacob presenting that session. This is going to be very helpful when someone is working on project real time. Looking forward to that session, Jacob. So the same time, everyone, 8 a.m. Eastern next Thursday. See you
I
everyone
also
again.
want to, JB, I also want to say that please follow these three because I know Matt is and Mike and Jacob. These three are continuing to put out content and videos and webinars. So please be sure to follow them because additional information will be coming out from all three. But yeah, thank you both. Thank you all for doing this. This was really insightful. And you're absolutely right, Jacob. When I ask you all to present, I want you to speak the truth. I don't want anything scripted, because I feel like this is how our trailblazers and our community will learn best.
Agreed. Thank you all.
Thanks
Thanks for
everyone.
having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you again. Bye.